Before we begin, the title is written in the right-hand corner of the screen. Enjoy watching.
It all started with an ordinary life. Working in an office, the girl constantly sorted out different documents and saw nothing but grayness, fatigue, and papers. She received a lot of assignments, but at the same time, it was not reflected in her salary. Money is always scarce. She works with or without weekends. The boss never pays and takes advantage of her kindness. He gives her an impossible amount of work and requires her to complete it by tomorrow morning. Even though it usually takes a couple of days, the subordinate has no right to refuse, as there is no other work to be found. The boss remembered that he would be gone all day tomorrow, and so added some time to her day, and also asked her not to waste too much electricity, because after all, it was the company's money. I had to smile sweetly and wish him a good evening, although I really wanted to tell him everything she thought about him. The girl's name is Bella. She is an ordinary worker in an ordinary office, waiting for the next contract renewal. Due to lack of time for herself, she has to eat fast food, and from the unusual in her life, she lost her parents as a child and grew up alone. Bella hated to be called an orphan, so she worked and managed to get a job in a good company. It was a very ordinary company with the same ordinary work schedule. After another long day of work, wanted to run to the store for an invigorating drink. Just today on the shift, her acquaintance. The girl isn't surprised to see Bella at the same time for the second week in a row, and of course it's not hard to guess that she's clearly unavailable. Her friend wished her patience and strength. Not everyone can work so hard and still have a smile on their face. She even gave her a drink to brighten up her everyday life a little. Bella thinks there's no point in complaining. She's chosen this life, and to get her contract renewed, she's going to have to go through with it. She spends so much time in the office that it's easier to move here and not come home at all. Spend a couple hours and go back to work again. The girl no longer counts empty bottles. She drinks one after another, because without it would not last even half an hour. She forgot when she last rested or slept at least a couple of hours. Now it's her real dream. For the last few months, this is what her bed looks like, and a little sleep that doesn't even last more than an hour. She's very scared and doesn't want to disappoint her boss or he'll just fire her. Now she doesn't think much about it, but a couple more months in this mode and her health will take its toll. It's already struggling, but now it's more important to her than money. Bella fell asleep and didn't hear the alarm clock. It was already sunrise, and there was no time left to even wash her face or go for a breath of fresh air. Suddenly, some kind of notification came to her phone. A reminder that she hadn't logged into the game in a while. Some new event has happened there. They invite you to look into another universe right now and advise you not to miss such an opportunity. Of course, I couldn't help it. The notice looked too tempting, so at least I'll get a little distraction and keep more than just papers in my hands. One day, disasters and monsters began to descend from the mountain ranges in the north and west. The protagonist, a former farmer, became enraged after the monsters destroyed his crops, and he decided to go to the mountains. This is where the other universe begins. The usual journey of a hero who fights disasters, gains fame, and gradually becomes a legendary hero. She likes to understand such games from time to time, manage to play the game, so she already has an 11th level. Bella admits that it's fun to watch her character grow, but at some point, all of a sudden, her hands start shaking uncontrollably. And that's not all. My heart starts beating harder and harder. There's a strange sensation, and at first glance, it looks like it's just the effects of those not-so-healthy drinks. She drank too many of them, more than 10. And in the meantime, before her eyes went completely black, she barely had time to remember to call an ambulance just in case. Bella was lying on the floor a second later and couldn't breathe. This had never happened before in all the time she'd been drinking these drinks. Maybe it wasn't even that. But what was it? It wasn't clear. The last thing she had time to think was, would her end come just like this in this annoying office with complete fatigue and hatred for everything around her? It's a shame, and you don't want to die from overwork at that age, because you have your whole life ahead of you. If the girl had only known it would turn out like this, she would never have wasted her time. There were so many things she wanted to try, so many dreams she wasn't even close to fulfilling. This world was too cruel to her, so maybe it was only for the best. Bella only had time to accept it and close her eyes. But a moment later, she entered another universe, the very one she had only been able to see through the screen of her phone before. She opens her eyes and sees something in front of her that she is very unaccustomed to. So many people and the girl only saw through the window and always dreamed of being in their shoes, becoming happy and getting a lot of time to be able to just walk around and not think about anything. It's beautiful weather outside. Everything is beautifully decorated. There are children around, plenty of entertainment, and some kind of special, pleasant atmosphere. It's very nice to look at, but first, it wouldn't hurt to figure out what it all means. It can't just be a dream. She should be dead by now, and so far, she has too many questions. There's a lot of little stores around, and the salesmen lure passers-by in any way they can, whatever their imagination can get its hands on. For example, this guy is offering a lot of discounts in honor of the blue moon. Today only, he has rare treasures from the north that will never be at such a low price again. Across the street selling pumpkin candy for just 1 dime, and meanwhile, the circus show is about to begin. Bella looks around and actually, this place seems too familiar to her. She hasn't realized where she is yet, and she hasn't even seen herself from the outside yet. In contrast to what she was used to seeing in her previous life, there are strange houses with nothing modern and people dressed in medieval outfits, as if it were a theme party. In spite of this, the atmosphere is beginning to like it a little bit. Everything is somehow very organic. You can feel harmony and calmness. People are kind and smiling, but there's something else that confuses her the most. There are countless windows popping up all around. They appear right in front of her eyes like hallucinations. And then some little rat runs by. It's one of those animals that the girl is very much afraid of and can't tolerate. But when she saw the special window that says her name and a few other things, now that was really unexpected. She's a gray city rat. She's excited about the festival and really likes spoiled pies. It is only after the rat that Bella realizes that she seems to have entered the game world, and immediately realizes why everything seems so familiar, as if she has seen it somewhere before. And on top of that, during the rebirth, she had some strange abilities, and honestly, it wasn't so bad to just die, but to be reborn in such a strange world, much worse than her previous life anyway. Now she just had to live a different life and do everything to be happy here at least. A window pops up that says the quest has begun. The player who goes through great trials and wishes the world to be destroyed, the system will help create a destroyed world, and the reward will be becoming a god. The girl saw this window in front of her that she just imagined. She rubbed her eyes, but the window didn't go anywhere. She has no idea what any of this means, because the window just ordered her to destroy the world. But could it be that the wish she made before she died, asking for the world to be destroyed, would make her have to do it herself? She didn't mean it at all, and really wants to give up the assignment. Bella doesn't even know what her new name or purpose in this world is. She only thought to refuse as 3 windows appeared in front of her, and it was written on them that it was no longer possible to refuse. She'd rather ask to win the lottery than destroy the world. It's an impossible task. And anyway, she's not the kind of person who'd be happy to do it. First of all, it is better to calm down. As a reward, you can get a good gift. Becoming a block sounds very tempting and interesting, but the price for it is not the easiest. If the world is destroyed, people will also die. And what is the point of being a god there, in which there is no one? Also, there's some kind of fine, and after it, 3 question marks. It's unclear what that means, and there's no clues anywhere. Although the system warns that it will help her, so the penalty is likely to be definitely not death, which is already pleasing. Now she had before her eyes the moment when her sight was finally gone. It was very frightening and unusual. She doesn't want to relive all those feelings again, so she's going to have to try really hard and do the best she can. Since this is just a learning phase, the punishment may be mild, not that she really wants to succeed, but for now, she doesn't have a time limit, and if this is really a quest, there must be a way out of it. Bella isn't in a hurry to replenish herself. She's just walking around and trying to learn something. She is interested in observing other people, hearing what they are talking about, getting used to the environment, and then she can get on with the task. It's unusual to see everyone cheerful. In my previous life, it was the opposite. People were angry, hated each other, and didn't even want to go out to meet someone. There was a risk of immediately catching a bad mood or quarreling with someone. As a result, the girl became a wanderer with nowhere to go. This can't go on forever, and something has to be done about it. Now it's her world, and everything will be the way she wants it to be. A girl at least here should know what it's like to be happy, to live life, not to waste time in some gray office. I had to wander around a bit first, to familiarize myself with how the system works, and basically system windows don't appear automatically if you think he name or object. Most of the time, they are barely noticeable, but stop clearer only when one gets to concentrate or consciously think about the object. For example, right now, Bella stopped very carefully at this item and immediately the window popped up that it was pumpkin candy, cheap candy in the shape of a pumpkin. However, because of this, sometimes you get unnecessary information that you can easily learn from. It would be nice if there was an option to disable this feature. Obeying a sudden impulse, she spit on her pride and shouted, "Pass out!" But nothing happened, and in the eyes of passers-by, she turned into a strange person yelling in the middle of the street. At least she was once again convinced that she was really in a different universe. There are rumors of a strange fog covering the mountains, because of which the trees are drying up and dying very quickly. No one knows the reason for it, and surprisingly, almost everyone is concerned, even the young girls who are standing nearby. It's really a real disaster. The catastrophe appears at the beginning of the game, so it happens before the main plot starts. Pretty soon the monsters will come down and the real game begins. But just because there are natural disasters and monsters in the world doesn't mean it's a particularly bleak or hopeless world. The place where all this is happening is a prosperous country. You just have to look around to see that. And what is the conclusion from this? It's very simple. You just need to use this ability to relax and enjoy life. And as for the monsters, that's the main character's concern. It seems like a pretty good plan to her. Of course, she won't have to do anything. All the responsibility is shifted to the other person. Very convenient and easy. Suddenly, a task appears. She gets a new quest, at first a little scared, and then even became curious about what awaits her next. Bella needs to poison the pumpkin candy. She will be rewarded with 80 gold pieces, and so far, no penalty for failure. She didn't like it anyway, wanted to see the other assignments, and there were a lot of them. The second task looks like this. You need to spread germs. The Black City Rat is a carrier of a terrible disease. You need to spread germs throughout the capital. For this task, you can get 71,000 gold pieces, except that this is not suitable for her either. For some reason, all she gets are small tasks that are supposed to destroy the world. It all comes down to the same thing. You have to do some kind of damage. At some point, the girl hears someone's voice. She immediately paid attention to it and could not think about anything else. Such a clear and powerful voice made her dizzy. This man was standing very close. And of course, she wanted to meet him. From afar, you can see his golden window, which is different from the others. All of them are blue, but he has a special one. It turns out it's a princess, yes, who will fan the flames of conflict. She is seen as a potential candidate for the title of ruler. The only strange thing is that a candidate for the title of ruler walks around such places. It was worth it just to look at the book in her hands, and a window appeared that explains that this is a very well-disguised forgery. Unlike the original, the ink here hasn't faded yet. And now we have to choose between two options: intervene and say it's fake, or just keep quiet and mind our own business. There's a chance that you could get the odd assignment for helping, such as her being asked to poison someone again or spread germs. There is another quest to choose from, to approach the girl who is to become the ruler and attract her attention. The reward is 600 gold, and also you can get a bonus for the conflict, an additional 2%. Based on the market prices she had seen since she had been playing in the other universe, 600 gold would be worth about 600,000. Now that was tempting. To think that getting her attention alone was worth that kind of money. Now there should be no reason to doubt it for sure. The salesman tells that girl that they only have originals and no knockoffs. He insinuates to her that he's making a huge discount. Supposedly, normally books like this cost 10 times as much, so while there's still time, you should take it. Bella barely had the courage to approach, and when she did, you have to have the courage to do something else. Talk to her. Strangely, the girl hadn't noticed before that there was one guy standing next to her who was most likely her guardian. He watches his mistress very carefully and makes sure no one hurts her or takes anything away from her, as they usually do. He is a true knight who was chosen as one of the best, though he could not have been otherwise. It looks like Bella missed the system window, so it's worth being more careful next time. But in the meantime, she made up her mind and asked if they were going to buy the book or just looking out of interest. The girl replied that she is still thinking about it. She has no idea how the original should look like and what the differences between them are. But in any case, she is not in a hurry to buy yet. This seller doesn't even realize that very soon his words will be disproved if, of course, Bella decides to do so. The princess almost believed him already. She was almost believing him. The longer she held this book in her hands, the more she wanted to buy it. The girl has a lot on her mind. She's afraid of doing something wrong because she doesn't know how things work here yet. She looks into the princess's eyes and realizes that things can work out. either perfectly or not so perfectly. So you have to think hard and take your time. In literally a second, Bella thought it over and very quickly said it was fake, and also offered to prove it if anyone didn't believe her. The princess was very much surprised. She had no idea that such a nice man could deceive her, especially considering her high status and how she could get back at him for it. For starters, Bella revealed that there is not a single erased word in the book. Everything is in perfect condition, as if printed last night. It's obvious that no one has even opened this book. And in fact, it's already a substantial proof that you want to believe. The princess looks at it as if she wanted to get to know it better. It's the first time she sees someone who is so good at it. Just in case the princess has any more questions, a window pops up to show that unlike the original book, the fake is glued together, which makes the edges look a little light-colored. Bella is starting to like this world more and more. These windows have been very useful, and they also show up just in time when needed. The girl offered to verify her words and drew attention to a corner of the book which was different in color, and the reason she had already given for it. If the book was real, the spine would have been glued in the traditional method of the time. Not many people know this, but the princess was lucky. Bella didn't notice the mirror in front of her at first, but when she looked into it, she saw her reflection for the first time. It was strange, but she hadn't even thought about it, and now she was almost frightened. She wasn't used to such light skin that seemed transparent. Also, thin eyebrows and very different facial features. She became very anxious, like not accepting her new body and feeling like she wanted to get out of it. The princess saw that the girl wasn't looking at her and took it as if there was something more interesting than herself. Not to stall, she asked a very simple question. What else was interesting in this room? And in fact, it was the easiest thing to do. Just look away and pop-ups appeared by themselves like clues. There's a cursed ring that sucks the life force out of its owner. A grandmother's flute that you have to breathe on very hard to make a sound. And then there's this masterpiece by Master Pavel. There's only 50 of them on the continent, and there's a lot more. The one that gets the most attention, of course, is the one that looks amazing and stands out from everything else. This egg-shaped object on some kind of gold stand. It's got some patterns on it and some scratches. The man had already forgotten he had it. Bella apologized and said she had something she needed to look at. She came back very quickly and told the princess that this was the most valuable thing she had seen here yet. The rest of it could be ignored. Masterpiece of Master Paul. Somehow there are only 50 of them. From the outside it looks like a simple decorative piece, but as soon as the plaster is chipped off and a pin is inserted into the small hole at the bottom, its true value will be revealed. The girl advised to buy this particular one, but the princess didn't quite understand why Bella was telling her this, since she herself could have bought it and not given it to someone else. It's incomprehensible to her, if it's so valuable, why she won't buy it herself. It could be sold for a lot more, though Bella didn't even think about it. She promised herself that she would be more careful, and before she did anything and did not say anything, she would think very carefully and not say unnecessary things. There's the question of whether it's worth taking him right now, and even if she decides to do it, how will the princess react? And also, Bella doesn't even have the money. To all in all, the assignment isn't even done yet. If it was, she could buy that egg right now. The only thing left for her to do to avoid showing her bad side is to laugh and pretend she doesn't care at all. The princess wondered if the girl was giving this egg away because she knew her, or if she really wasn't interested in buying it. It turns out that if it hadn't been for the girl, the princess would never have paid attention to anything other than the book she came for. She's not in a hurry to go anywhere, but rather as if she's staying on purpose, just to find out something else, if they find something even more valuable. She's hinting at it, because with a lot of money, she can buy the whole store, or even several neighboring stores. And at that moment, the girl remembers that she has drifted away from her destiny. She has spent too much time here, and something has to be done about it. Time flies very quickly in the store. You cannot notice how the whole day passes, and she will not do anything useful, or rather, simply will not have time to do it. Meanwhile, there is very happy news. As the princess has been talking to her for more than half an hour, you know that the girl interested her. Accordingly, the task is completed. Strange that she had not thought of it before, and at that moment, unnoticed by the others, the first 600 gold pieces appeared in her pockets. Since there's no hurry anymore, did we talk about criminal organizations that use today's festival for their dishonestly earned money? They hide it and make it look honest. They usually take advantage of such streams. Where there are many people, there is a big turnover of money. They go from hand to hand and very quickly. It is possible that the royal family is also involved and is one of these organizations. Meanwhile, the princess wanted to know the name of the girl she'd been chatting with for hours and apologized for not doing so sooner. As soon as Bella wanted to say her old name, her new body wouldn't let her. Her voice seemed to answer the question and call her name. In fact, the princess was sure the girl would try to cover up and was surprised Milana had no problem doing so. Suddenly, the girl realizes that she has once again said too much. But there is no time to be angry with herself. She is doomed, because from the looks of it, they know very well who she is. It was a very big mistake, but so far, which is very strange, nothing bad happens. On the contrary, the princess gives her some pouch and wants to reward her for the girl giving her very useful information. She gave her a very beautiful red brooch, and she also asked her to come to the Levantor Palace. At the entrance, you can ask for Dominic Quito. He will take her straight to the living room. The princess doesn't want this to be their last meeting. She realized that this was more than just a useful acquaintance, and she just couldn't not invite her over. Milana thanked and promised that she would definitely come, although in fact she wasn't even going to think about it. All thanks to the window, which suggested that the princess hires talented people with high salaries, gives them hard work, and enjoys watching them cry. As soon as they had gone farther away, the assistant asked if the lady had given her too much, that it was pocket change for her. Besides, it was some sort of investment in the future. Then one got curious to see if the girl really hadn't fooled them, and this egg was that special. Even his appearance was enough to make her not spare a penny, and even want to find something more. The princess didn't just enjoy expensive gifts, jewelry, or outfits. This egg is so beautiful that she would give all her money for it. She knows very well that Milana is a long-forgotten name, and yet her daughter has only now appeared. The princess will not leave the girl alone. At least she will try to keep an eye on her for a while, in case she sees or learns something interesting. It turns out that they both know very well which one is which means the fun part begins. Meanwhile, Milana is already at her house. She went to the bathroom, washed her face, had a little dinner, and finally came to her room. This day has been very difficult, intense, but it's just the beginning. Although the girl doesn't even know if she likes the second life, or if she wouldn't want to get that second chance. And maybe it would be easier to just die once and for all. She thought about it. The princess is very generous. She is a nice person, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't let her get too close. There are no friends here. This world is a game and nothing more. You need to think only about yourself, your future, your money, and your safety. Nothing else should interest her. While she took a bath, tried to put her thoughts of this world, of questions about this body in order. First of all, this world isn't really a game. It's more like a parallel universe with a game-like world structure. Instead of being just a game, such as the fact that luxury items like soap, which is commonly used by the nobility, can be quietly purchased at the hotel. Secondly, the life of a woman named Milana Rator doesn't seem peaceful at all. It's as if there's something sinister and dark lurking in it. When the girl saw her body while bathing, she had a large cross-shaped scar below her neck. She definitely couldn't have inflicted it on herself. I wondered to know who would have done it. Milana's family won, so why was she alone in the capital? It's like from the beginning, she didn't even think about coming to someone or talking to someone. She felt completely alone. And also, there is the most important question. How on you the most important thing to know, Milana, and to figure it out, you need at least a little more information. Right now, the girl knows too little. And thirdly, the only ability given to her is to read. She is very good at it, and at a great speed. It doesn't even have an inventory window. Just being able to read information is too much to handle. So what she's saying is that she could definitely make a fortune with this ability. It's good that she doesn't have to humiliate herself with a contract job anymore. She can gradually gather information about her body, but the immediate task she has to do starting tomorrow is to use the system window to find a job. As soon as it was light outside, it feels like people have been waiting for this moment and came out at the same time. There are even more people today than yesterday. Some are in a hurry to go somewhere, and others are strolling around and enjoying the start of the day. Milana was one of them. She didn't want to stay at home, because in any case, on the street, you can learn, find, or see something. And at home, she would just waste time for nothing. The girl had just walked out as she immediately found what she needed. She recognized the place from the clothes on some of the staff, and knew this was where she wanted to go. This place is like a hospital, where you can find a doctor and reason out at least what kind of scar she has on her body. Maybe that will explain a lot. A doctor is always necessary in any era, of course. The girl knows nothing about medicine, but thanks to the window, it will understand everything. For example, Lydia, she has a cold, and the herb barbudo crushed and brewed with ginger is a good remedy. And Caleb, his fingers have been tingling for a long time. He thinks it's just some plant poison, but he's actually been bitten by a snake, and it's more serious than he thinks. It turns out that as soon as the girl looks at someone on the territory of the hospital, the system window responds to her thoughts. It tells her who has what problem and how it can be cured. Accordingly, we can assume that wherever she is, the window adjusts and understands what information she needs. If she can't find a job for a long time, she can get a job as a doctor, so she won't be penniless. Suddenly, she hears some men talking who want the sage from Redder to come here. She didn't think long, went straight to them, apologized, and asked if they had a moment to spare. At first, they refused and hinted that they were very busy, and then asked who she was. Milana explained that she wanted to ask them a quick question about what they knew about Ritora. The question is a strange one. They don't understand why she's interested in it, but to make them more talkative, she ordered the most expensive dish for each of them. The second man asked the exact same question. How can she not know about this, since everyone is told this information from childhood? To which she replies that she grew up a little naive about how the world works, so she seeks advice from someone like them to guide her. The whole thing is that once upon a time there lived a wise man related to Baron Redder. It was said that the wise man sees through everything and knows no boundaries. Yet the sage was still a man. As his doom approached, he left one last wish. He wanted the sage to reappear in the retort the day before his end of life. Upon hearing the news, the royal family made an agreement with them in exchange for the Baron's financial support from the royal family. They agreed to receive the sage when he was born, but despite many efforts, the sage never appeared. And eventually, the royal family withdrew their support for the Baron of Redder. The current Baron protested vehemently, but was not listened to. The Baron died suddenly from shock, and his wife is reported to have gone somewhere. It's a very sad, but at the same time, an amazing story that's a shame not to know. Milana found out afterward if they had children. They had an only daughter, but no one knows if she's okay. No one but Milana. The one and only daughter is already here. The girl is grateful to them for this information, and now she knows a little more. So to summarize, Milana Ritor, a fallen aristocrat and also completely ruined, few people know what she even looks like. The sage's ability to see through everything is very similar to her ability to see the information windows. And then the girl had an epiphany about what would happen if she was caught and proved to be wise. The princess could take her in and never let her go again. It could happen at any moment. You need to be prepared and think it through. If it seems like it's a long way off, then time is too short. The princess is unlikely to drag it out. What she hates the most is going back to a life of having to work late and seeing nothing but her desk and endless amounts of paperwork. She had to give up the idea of becoming a doctor because it was the same as any other job. It was good that she remembered that now and not too late. Finding a normal job has turned out to be much harder than she thought. Sitting in one place is not what she wants. She needs a job that doesn't remind her of an office and everything she had in her previous life, but she has no idea what that should look like either. What if Milana felt something under her feet, stepped on an ad or something? It says something about a Sophis appraisal office, a name inspired by the ancient sage Tor Sophis. From a stone picked up on the street to valuable national treasures, the flyers say they will appreciate anything for money. In this world, with all types of magic, curses, some items are very difficult to handle, such dangerous items that are hard to identify. Magicians are definitely needed. Because it requires the use of force to evaluate, however, it doesn't need any such thing. Although it lacks strength, it has superior capabilities instead. Milana will definitely find her dream job. At least now, she is completely sure of it. She walks into some huge building and it's like working in a bank. Lots of people and hustle and bustle and money. The staff immediately comes up to her and asks how they can help her. No one is ignored from the first second they are here. The girl said hello and told me that she was thinking about getting a job here, if of course it's possible and they have vacancies. Unfortunately, the hiring of new appraisers for their appraisal office is on hold. No one knows how long this will last or when spots will become available. They usually do. They often hire through special recommendations or connections. Suddenly, this assistant thought that this wasn't the kind of thing someone who was meeting him for the first time should say. Normally, he should have thrown such people out right away. But though she wore simple clothes, her hair shining, her demeanor lacking the usual shyness that commoners show when they are treated politely. Milana seemed very noble. And to surprise him even more, she started with the main thing, told him information that only close relatives know about him, such as his bad habits, the fact that he has a red dog at home and his favorite leash. Red. The guy's a little confused right now. He doesn't understand how that's possible since he's seen this man for less than 5 minutes. With those words, she not only surprised him but also made him a little afraid. He actually got scared that she was some kind of witch or worse, seemed abnormal, and wanted to report it immediately to the deputy guild leader. He asked her to wait a minute and said he would contact higher-ups. If it might seem that this conversation looked too strange, it was not. The girl knew perfectly well what she was doing, and most importantly, for what purpose. Meanwhile, that deputy has already run to the chief deputy and is rushing to tell him everything he wants to tell him. The deputy head of the assessment center, Alyssa Barrett. Normally it's forbidden to approach her about anything trivial, but this time, boy, he has the right to do so. He said someone came in to apply for a job as a counselor. Though the aide knows it very well, Elise reminded him that the recruitment period for new people was already over, and even resented that he might not know it. He told her it was a special case and he thought she should come and see it for herself. The boss will understand everything as soon as she talks to that girl, and in fact, she is already very interested in what this special case is that makes her have to drop her cases. Elise agreed very quickly and asked to be escorted to that man. She's sure she'll understand very quickly and there won't be anything supernatural there. Meanwhile, the girl was already waiting. More than 1 minute had passed. At first, it even seemed that she had been deceived and no one was coming. First, they looked at her from the balcony, which wasn't very nice because you could have just walked over and said hello and talked to her. Elise immediately realized that this was no ordinary girl. She could be a sorceress or something like that. She wanted to check it out with her special stone, a pendulum that determines the opponent's magic power, and the more magic power the opponent has, the stronger the pendulum swings. If it's a special case, the pendulum should definitely react strongly, and if it's not, nothing will happen. For some reason, the pendulum didn't move a millimeter. It was like it was frozen in one place, even though the assistant said it was a very special case that was worth her time. The boss is very angry. She resents that she just wasted her time, even though no more than a couple of minutes have passed. The assistant couldn't say anything. He's left to change and admit he made a mistake. At the very last moment, Elise did calm down and decided it was a waste of time. She asked him to say goodbye to that girl and ask her not to come here again. She has no desire to go down there and talk to her. She has more important things to do. She expected the man to be a wizard, but nothing happens. Elise is disappointed. And then Milana says something that Elisa heard even from the second floor, a cup overflowing, the meaning of which is known to a very limited number of people. No one knows what it looks like, what it means, how it helps. And not only that, it turns out the girl just saw something interesting and didn't even say the name of the item with all her voice. Someone calls the object a goblet, something similar to a glass. And of course, there are many other names that have nothing to do with the real name. Now Elise didn't need any other proof, no other checks. She understood everything already, especially since the girl had approached the only genuine thing in this hall, which was no coincidence. Suddenly, a man's voice boomed across the room, demanding that someone immediately appreciate what he had brought with him. Everyone heard it, even on the second floor. He promised they'd leave here until he got help. At first there was a refusal, but he is not satisfied with it. He came with a specific purpose and is sure that here I will definitely help him. He needs to find out at least how much this jewelry is approximately worth. He doesn't need the exact cost, but even that proved difficult for one of the specialists. She is very hesitant and thinks that it is easier to turn to someone else, but definitely not to her. She is new here and has not yet learned to determine the value as quickly as this man is asking, especially since she has a slightly different specialization, and the jewelry appraisal office is on the second floor. He was not satisfied with that answer either. He recalled that the girl had just said that it was a high-quality demantoid, so she must have some idea how much it was worth. Of course, that was partially true, but she couldn't just randomly give him an arbitrary price. Everything had to be by rules and standards. Milana couldn't get past it. She was surprised that someone was angry about such nonsense. After all, his question could be answered anywhere else. If he was in a hurry, why waste time on idle talk? Especially since he was advised to go up to the second floor and he was too lazy to do even that. But suddenly, she looked at the jewelry and understood everything. The ring with the demantoid, the same one the trading company has been looking for hours, It's a stolen item. Now I see why he's in such a hurry and wants to get rid of it as soon as possible. This man is one of those who very much likes to appropriate what belongs to others. He exchanges objects for money and thus earns his living. Now it's clear the theft report has been filed. It wouldn't be a good idea to stay here too long. In any case, she already knows how to use this situation to her advantage and benefit from it. While a coworker is trying to tell him what to say, Milana comes up and says his item looks very expensive. He noticed her immediately and thought she was just the right person to help him. The man asked who she was before showing her the jewelry. He thought that it was not in vain to stand until the last, but someone is very much mistaken. And in fact, the girl is not going to help him. She specifically loudly reported that the ring is stolen and belongs to a completely different person. Or rather, the company. His expression changed immediately because if you think about it, he was already trapped. And it was unlikely that anyone would let him go until the ring was returned to where it had been taken from. He starts to justify that it's some mistake, and this ring is a family heirloom that was inherited from his parents. But it didn't help him. Everyone immediately watched the news and saw that indeed, a similar ring was missing from some company. In that case, the girl asked for proof that he was not deceiving, though she saw perfectly well in the window that he was really a villain and was already preparing to run away. He took the box very quickly. He thought he could outsmart everyone, but no way. There are too many people around who won't let him do that. He's under a lot of stress, panicking, but there's nothing he can do. He refuses to confess, and for some reason he's still trying to escape. Milana was believed by almost everyone, and no one believed him. If the ring was really a family heirloom, he wouldn't have done that and would have tried to prove that it was. He acts like a real crook, but the girl's always one step ahead. All she had to do was put her foot down. The man falls, and the box slips out of his hand so far that he can no longer reach it. Elise took the opportunity. She took that box very quickly and couldn't believe the girl realized it so quickly. But her assistant, to whom the man turned to in the first place, did not even suspect it. It turns out that Milana did both. She punished the villain and proved that she was worth her time. The girl added that her words can be verified. All you have to do is contact the company and find out what their situation is. Elise has ordered this man to be handed over to security. He must be punished, but she still has a few questions for Milana. She no longer looks at her as indifferently as she did in the beginning. The girl is proving with every minute that she can be useful, and they ignored her for nothing in the beginning. Elise thanked her for the first time for her help, because the girl had saved her from a very unpleasant situation. They have rules, not to accept anything if it is stolen or does not belong to the person who came to them. For this, they have huge fines. They risked losing their jobs and even the whole company. The girl replied that she was very glad that she had been helpful. And at the same time, Elise could not stop thinking how she had managed to determine the authenticity of the ring the first time, and to discover that it had been stolen. Her instincts tell her that surely the girl is clearly an unusual person, and since she's come to apply for the job, it's a huge gift because she's more perfect than anyone else. Of course, everyone thought it was strange that with such abilities, she would want to work in a regular job, but since that was the case, the woman was happy about it. She even offered to buy her a drink and discuss employment issues. Milana is very happy. This is exactly what she wanted. She is lucky to have had the moment that helped her achieve it so quickly. She is insanely grateful for her ability that helps everywhere and in every situation. Meanwhile, they are already in the office. The assistant has listened to the order and is about to bring them each a cup of tea, their specialty, which can only be tasted here. The woman thanked again for what Milana did for her business. Otherwise, they would have been shut down and paid a huge fine. The girl replied that it was very easy, and it was only a little of what she could do for them. And also, she still wonders how many shifts the man who bravely came to assess the stolen item here had. It turns out that there are a lot of people like that nowadays. They are trying to find money urgently so that they can spend it in different establishments. This is a very big problem that the authorities have been struggling with for several years. The police are barely coping, and the crooks are getting smarter and smarter. When the woman said that, given that the girl had applied to the best appraisal bureau in the capital, she seemed to be completely unaware of the situation in the capital. Milana smiled slightly in response. For this is the most famous story, just a typical power struggle within the royal family. His Majesty the Emperor, or Henius, is not interested in the safety of the capital. He is too busy looking after Duke Jahig, son of the late king and his own nephew. Since all the armed forces are deployed to guard the palace, there are big gaps in the capital's security system, and as a result, there are more villains, and they are taking advantage of this situation, and they are doing a good job of it. Meanwhile, 3 people are already busy dealing with the problem. They are looking for an illegal establishment, but very much doubt they are on the right track. No one knows what to do, but once they start doing it, they don't plan on backing down. The assistant turns to His Majesty and says that it seems they have found this place that secretly sells invitations to places that are forbidden by law. It is in such establishments that people leave all their hard-earned money after they have received it in exchange for stolen jewelry. Strange. A lot of the Lord decided and offered to leave here. He doesn't feel like staying here, especially since they didn't bring anyone with them, no guards or knights, and he's so not used to it. Mr. Surely people are not just exchanging invitations for money. There must be some secret code and it's important for them to find it. They don't have much time at all, so he advises them to hurry up and put their best foot forward like never before. Meanwhile, the girls are still in the office and are talking about how the Emperor turns a blind eye to the security measures in the capital and doesn't explain it in any way. Many people have asked him this question, but he keeps changing the subject and so on and so forth. Assistant had already brought tea for them and offered to bring some sweets for a snack. They had just had something very fresh and special. Not only did she bring just 1 teapot of tea, she made 3 different kinds to choose from, which was very nice. The girl looked at this teapot and saw something. She tried to read all the information quickly so no one would notice anything. On the one hand, it might seem like a sign of hospitality, but in fact, each kettle has its own description. For example, the first one, a kettle from a brand that produces mid-price segment cookware, which is copied from the design of another brand. This thing was criticized for being too similar and it is no longer produced. The second teapot, it is a vintage supplier of tableware to the royal family. Despite being made over 90 years ago, it is in excellent condition. And the third teapot, the cheapest, which copied the design of a very famous company. You can see it by the elegant patterns and water supply. And then, the girl realizes that this is another test. She must guess only one of the 3 teapots, which is authentic. It turns out that everything is not just a tea party, but another test. When the woman asked what kind of tea she was choosing, it meant something completely different. She should choose an authentic teapot, and of course Milana settled on the one in the middle. Elise is absolutely thrilled. She had no doubt that the girl would understand everything and look the right teapot. It was a difficult task, but she got through it. But it didn't end there. The woman asked, "What about these leaves, which are in a special jar?" Milana answered in a second that the tea leaves collected before summer and partially wrapped leaves. They are not the best, a grade lower than in the other jars. And also she noticed that she was originally given the wrong name for these sheets. They are called by a different name, and it's strange that the woman made that mistake. It means it was just another test. Elisa can't believe Milana is handling her smile so flawlessly. She responded even more than necessary. Now she was left with only one question: who she was and how she did it, and wanted to look at some kind of license or education or something to prove her abilities. But Milana answered question to question and found out how much of that was necessary to get hired. The woman explained that it was very important that they had qualifications and some kind of document so that they could show it to the vetting service, which checks the staff once a year, and Milana replied that she had everything, and said she was the deputy guildmaster. In her opinion, that was more than enough and better than any other credentials. And she's also one of those people who hates the hassle. She hates paperwork and wants to get a job without the hassle. If it's that important for them to see her qualifications, she certainly could have shown it, but warned them it would take time. For starters, to dispense with the paperwork, she showed it indeed, turned her attention to the statue behind them, who was frustrated by the lie detection spell, and also the wing-shaped statue at the entrance, which has a magic detection spell cast on it. It calls attention to all of this, and says information that the average person can't recognize. Now, they definitely shouldn't have any questions, because even if someone else has the relevant documents, they mean nothing compared to what the girl has just demonstrated. On the one hand, the woman is very happy to have found such a specialist, especially since he came to her on his own. But on the other hand, she is tormented by the question of how such a thing is possible. She has no explanation other than Milana is related to a wise man who had similar abilities. So they began to stare into each other's eyes for a very long time, each with their own thoughts that could make you go crazy. Since there was nothing left to hide, and she had shown what she could do, the girl took off her hood and told her real name. Elise immediately started apologizing for her rudeness, ashamed that it had come to this, and that she didn't even want to approach her at first. And also, the woman started treating her as if she was a higher status girl. Milana immediately said that it wasn't necessary, especially since she came to be her subordinate and didn't deserve that kind of respect. And at this point, something interesting happened. The girl asked to hide her identity and not to tell anyone what she had just learned about her. Eliza thinks that this is not necessary, especially since she will not be able to treat her as a normal person in any way. The girl heard that the Baron Ratour family failed the test and completely lost their authority. This explains why they didn't go to the Imperial Palace. Just in case, to prove that she should get a job, the girl offered to help with any problem. Elisa had just recently bought an old casket made over 200 years ago. She had no idea what kind of magic it was and had no way of figuring it out. She told about this problematic item and thought that if the girl would help, of course it would be accepted without all those documents and certificates she had asked for earlier. The woman is trying to remember that no matter how she feels about the girl, there is no doubt that she could be dangerous, and a choice needs to be made now. Take the risk or just say goodbye so that there are no problems later on. Milana realized that the box was very expensive and warned that if that was the case, she would have to make up the loss. The woman agreed and finally promised that if it worked out, the girl would get the job, even if others protested. For starters, she asked to go to a top-secret area, and in the security salts, Milana will have to wear something. It's just a black blindfold, and they both took a big rope from both ends so that the girl wouldn't go in the wrong direction and followed her. It's not clear what it's for, though it's probably just so that Milana, in case she turns out to be the villain, wouldn't know the way to the secret place and wouldn't be able to remember it in any way. Here the security is so strict that sometimes even the bosses are not allowed in, holding tightly to the rope. The girl feels that she is doing something wrong. She also has no idea how much further to go. After a couple of minutes, they were already there. The woman allowed the blindfold to be removed and offered to look around. She had once been brought here, just as she had been brought to Milana. The girl took off her blindfold and didn't even immediately realize what it all meant. This place didn't look any special, like a very ordinary hall or hallway. It's a half-empty room with only the box in it. It's like a room designed to keep the box imprisoned, under complete control. It's about a cursed box that contains something sinister. It's protected by magic. Just touching it is enough to drive a mentally weak person insane. The description is very frightening. Besides, this thing emits something strange. The woman starts talking and says that, as you can already see, this is a rather sinister object. Milana immediately wondered where they found this and who dared to touch the box to bring it right here. Elise replied that for their company it was a trifle and nothing so difficult. Then she suggested to come closer and take a closer look. The girl began to resent how she could suggest it, because she herself would not dare to do such a thing, as well as everyone around her. And suddenly, as soon as she took one step closer, something frightening happened. The girl walked into the danger zone and felt it immediately. It was as if she felt a flame of fire on her, an unexpected warmth, and at the same time, a feeling as if she had been deceived by the... She's having a hard time breathing, and from the outside looking in, it looks like it wasn't an accident. It would be really bad if she was just duped. She began to remember her past life, how tormented she had been then, and now she had about such sensations that could not be confused with anything else. It's weird that no one tries to help. Everyone just watches from the sidelines like they're at some show or like they knew this was going to happen. I wonder if it's a trap or not. Some sort of difficulty setting came on, and at that moment, Milana got completely confused. No one explained anything to her. They just offered her to pass on, and then it started. We can only hope it's a mistake. Otherwise, she will stop trusting people completely. And suddenly, danger neutralized, she saw this inscription on the window and was able to breathe again. Apparently, things were not as dire as they had felt. Elisa's approach, and in fact, she did not see anything unusual. From the outside, it was incomprehensible what the girl was experiencing, and she just did not have the opportunity to say. So everyone stood still and did nothing. For them, it happened in a second, but for her, it was very painful. It's obvious that the curse was coming from the chest, and then the girl realizes that there's too much she doesn't know. It's a pity that the window didn't warn her, and she had to step into the unknown. The woman decided to tell me that the girl was the first to get off so lightly and hardly felt a thing. When others first encountered it, they all fainted and didn't last more than 1 second. And also, the woman didn't hold back and complimented that the longer one looks at her, the more adorable Milana looks. It's so messed up that you don't want to go into the unknown anymore. Next time a girl will ask something before doing something. Anyway, since she's okay, that can only mean one thing. She's much stronger than that curse and the possibility of being able to undo it. She wanted to check out what was inside, even though it was a huge risk. She wasn't going to stop. She needed to show her fearlessness, even though it was almost non-existent. She looks at this chest and sees a pop-up that explains what it is. The Ghost King orb that is in there. The orb of Tigris Colossus, the last king of the Wraith, abandoned by the goddess of heaven. He was cursed for the rest of his life. And also it was known that if you hid it underground, the earth would wither away. The girl immediately retold it to the new boss, and that was just in shock. She just did not believe her ears. No one and never could believe that in the chest is the same sphere, which is even scary to look at. And then Milana gets a new quest called Tiger Colossus Orb. You have to bury it to desecrate the earth and make the goddess leave this world. The reward is 113,000 gold, and again, there is no penalty for this. It turns out it is a cursed destruction quest, the girl said. Since it is a cursed object, even just possessing it can lead to infection of someone. She advised not to bury it in the ground in any case. She refuses to do this assignment and believes it is better to break the spell than risk the world and people. You need a fang, a wheel, and a candle to break the spell. Everyone writes down every word she says to do exactly as she says it. They unanimously decided to obey her. Milana is the only one who knows anything about it, so she's in charge for now. No one has any reason not to trust her or take her word for it yet. Now we need to join forces and do a very difficult job. The girl warned that it would depend on how much they put out. If something went wrong, someone could get hurt. They managed to get it done very quickly, and so far, the job is definitely secured for her. She is admired, and of course doesn't mind working together. It's not only interesting, but also useful. In one day, she solved a problem that had been unsolved for hundreds of years. And then, something unexpected happened. The chest started to move, some red aura seeping out of it, which you can see very well. Milana was confused and thought it was all for nothing. She was scared that she had ruined her reputation and she had no idea what it was, good or bad. She followed the instructions from the system window exactly, but something is going on that is not going according to plan. Far from plan. Elise is starting to get angry. She realizes that she can't influence anything and thinks that she trusted her for nothing. They need to open the chest and it seems to have become even stronger. It's good that the girl doesn't get upset before the time. They still have a few seals left. If they break 6 more, everything will definitely work out. Or maybe she just doesn't want to upset her boss and pretends that everything is fine. This is also a possibility. Although the woman didn't even know they had multiple seals, she thought they only had one copy the whole time. She took the girl's hand and said it was incredible. She never ceases to amaze her and do something impossible. Her mood changes every second. First she's delighted and happy, then scared and angry at her. The whole point is that no one has ever been able to break the seal and find out how many of them even exist. Milana just broke it and determined how many are left. She has no idea how many mages have fainted trying to do that. These were very warm words, which only supported and added determination. Also, other people congratulated her and said that now they trusted her completely. At least, the girl is definitely stronger than everyone they have seen and invited to solve this problem. She does something impossible every time, even though she actually sees it a little differently, thinks it could be better. And also, the woman had an idea, so that she didn't have to bother with it, could be sold at a high price to some aristocrat who collects cursed items and could appreciate them for what they were worth. Milana doesn't quite get it anymore. What they want from her, the main thing is to please everyone and get the long-awaited job. The woman realized she was getting a little carried away, needing to talk business and not get distracted by some obscure ideas. And then the most important thing happened. Elise came over with a smile and made her happy that she was waiting for her at her workplace tomorrow. She could start in the morning. In fact, the girl thought, then she said it. And there was something to be done. The woman did not realize what it was and asked. It turns out it's about the salary she'll get every month and maybe some bonuses, if they have them at all. In fact, it is quite a normal and logical question. Any person should be interested in it in the first place, because for the sake of money. After a while, She had already familiarized herself with how life was organized here. There was a separate dormitory, working hours from 10 in the morning to 4 in the evening, which was much more convenient than in her previous life. And most importantly, she's contracted for a salary of 30,000 gold. That's a whopping 3 billion a year. Meanwhile, the woman is a bit discontented. She thinks she was cheated, although nothing like that happened. Apparently, she just feels sorry to pay such a big salary. She thought the girl would ask for almost nothing, but it turns out she has a big problem with that, and she wouldn't settle for a low salary. From the moment Milana sat down at the negotiating table, she became a completely different person. Although in fact, the girl just sensibly evaluates her labor and knows what she wants because of it. She's the best at what she does, and there's no one better the company can just find. Then she just tried to push and remind her of all the benefits, if the woman agreed. In the end, she won and got everything she wanted. She has warned that she will not work more than they agreed. If the salary is paid less than it should be, she can quit on the same day. In this, she is absolutely strict and unwavering. Actually, it's very right. She doesn't make mistakes from the past, and it's very good that she was able to show herself so confidently. The woman may be dissatisfied, but she has no other choice. How could she think that such a job would pay little, even less than regular employees? Milana is not one to devalue her strength, at least not in her new life, in which she promised herself to live in a completely different way. And so far, she's doing quite well at it. Despite all this, the girl was insanely polite. She even ended the negotiation with impeccable manners, as if she didn't demand anything. She said she was very happy they had come to a common agreement and promised not to disappoint all those who believe in her. Meanwhile, Elise thought that she could try to risk running into the royal family, but in that case, she'd have to find a way to hide it. It's been a while since she's been in contact with the guildmaster, so she wants to tell him something. More specifically, that by some miracle they managed to recognize the cup of overflow and meet the person who seems to be their destiny. Hours later, the letter was in this guy's hands, and he didn't think it was possible. It was more like some kind of joke, but still, it became interesting to learn something else. He knows firsthand that this wasn't something a normal person could handle, so it means that Elisa met someone special. Without a second thought, canceled all his business and decided that it meant he had to see her in person, and the sooner the better. It was so interesting that he didn't even want to think about anything else. In the meantime, the girl is trying to think about money and whether to worry about it now. It turns out that the accumulated wealth, it is only a matter of time, and with it should not be a problem. She can earn a little or a lot, which will be enough for the whole year. It remains to figure out what to do with the salary, which she just received. At first, she wanted to think about some small apartment, maybe some new things or something else she couldn't afford in her past life, to make up for past goals. But suddenly she was thwarted. They came two girls who seemed very familiar, at least one of them for sure. Milana only realized after a couple of minutes that she had seen them just yesterday or the day before yesterday. They're the same employees who refused to help the villain. They intuitively felt it wasn't worth it. One was definitely called Agnes, the other Lyra. Turns out they'd just come to thank her for her help in investigating the theft incident the other day, all the while wondering if it would be unnecessary, but decided that if they didn't, they'd think about it even longer. As a token of appreciation, one of them offered to treat her to an amazing drink tonight. It's made from apples from her signature recipe. If Milana has time, they would love to go out with her after work, and also warned that if she was uncomfortable and had any other plans, she could feel free to say no. The girl thought it had been a long time since she had arrived here and still hadn't found time to rest, so needed to make amends. It would be wrong to refuse such pleasant company. Maybe these two will even remain her friends. When Milana was working on contract, even if she could get to a corporate dinner, she still felt superfluous and aloof, as if she was out of place. She'd never been invited like that, and it was very pleasant. She decided very quickly and agreed to go together. The girls are very happy. The main thing is to always think ahead and in time to notice possible traps. Not that they are what they may seem to be. They eventually agreed to meet after 6 o'clock in the evening at some place in the neighborhood where they could sit and relax. Meanwhile, it's been a while and it's time to leave work. Milana found the address very quickly and she's already here. It seems to be a popular place. It's like it's never empty, quiet, or boring. It's just weird that she doesn't see the girls here. And she came first. Just thinking about it, the door opens and one of them comes in. The girl looks very frightened and panics among the crowd looking for Milana. She doesn't understand what is going on and what could have spoiled such an evening. Agnes barely utters a few words and can't calm down. She's shaking like she's in trouble. It took more than 5 minutes for her to say what she wanted to say. It was very strange. Milana had already thought whatever she wanted to say. And it turns out the girl can't find the liar. It's disappeared. It's nowhere to be found, not even at home and in the nearest streets either. And then, when the girl saw her from afar, her friend was right in front of her, but far away, and then suddenly turned into an alley. In addition, there are rumors that recently in their neighborhood began to kidnap everyone. Children, girls. And not only, Agnes is very nervous. She cannot even imagine what could happen to her and how to help her. Milana doesn't understand anything. She asks her to calm down and speak slower. It's clear that the girl is trying to fit in a short time, but the faster she speaks, the less it becomes clear what she's talking about. And then the girl turns her head to the right. It's like some force made her do it, and it wasn't by accident. And then a window pops up near one of the bartenders at the place. He's in some group, does shady business, and looks alarmed when he hears about the kidnapping. Milana believes that if she acts too rashly, it could have unpleasant consequences. She needs to quickly think of what to do. Time is now more precious than ever. Every second counts. There's no telling what a maniac might be doing with the liar at this time. If she's really been kidnapped, suddenly the door opens. A man in a black cloak and hood enters the establishment. The girl noticed him at once and thought that he was obviously here for a reason. People like him almost never come here. They prefer to rest a little differently and in other places. A gold-colored window pops up that says this is Grand Duke Jahig Redham, known for his exceptional swordsmanship and outstanding looks. There are various rumors about the Duke. He is secretly investigating a case of an illegal group, and he is probably the one who can handle the case, and if not, then he can help out. His window is the same color as the princess's. Does that mean he's an important person too? Although it's obvious even without clues. Either way, we need to get some information from him. Milana promised that she would try to deal with everything, and her friend asked to go home as soon as possible so that nothing would happen to her. No time to explain. She asked me not to ask, just to do what she tells her. And then, as time goes on, Agnes will find out everything. The girl thought for a long time whether to listen to her or not. She really wanted to get involved and couldn't bear to just sit at home and wait for things to be resolved. But still, was able to trust and promise to go to the police station and then home and look forward to the news. She wanted to help at least a little so she wouldn't sit in one place or she'd never forgive herself for it. Meanwhile, this guy's already at the bartender and Milana's watching them, and she's not going anywhere until she's done with them. At the very least, if they have any conversation about this case, she owes it to herself to overhear it so she has a better understanding of what happened. And then she notices a very suspicious bottle that looks a little different from the rest and doesn't fit the theme of the place. It was enough to just look at it as a window pops up that it was a cheap imitation of a famous drink that was commonly used to hand out fake tickets to a hidden arena that not everyone could get into. It was distributed by the leader of the arena. Anyone caught with this ticket was sentenced to a horrible punishment. When the guy took this bottle and was about to leave, the girl came closer and said something before it was too late. Naturally was very scared, but at the very last moment warned him it was fake. The guy didn't even notice her until now. She's also hooded and hardly draws attention to herself at all. After such words, of course, he couldn't go any farther. Curious to know where she got that from. And also, it was not yet known if he knew what his bottle was, though it wasn't impossible that he might know. Milana reiterated that he was holding a fake, and if he was spotted with that bottle, no good would come of it. He risked death as soon as that happened. Instead of saying hello normally, the Duke immediately demands more information without even asking what her name is or why she's helping him out. The girl paid almost no attention to it. He, so handsome that even the most horrible words from his lips would not spoil anything. He was so beautiful that Milana even stared at him and didn't even notice that she stopped talking to him. He had to touch her shoulder to bring her back to reality and find out more information after all. It's incomprehensible to him that let's say she realized the invitation was fake the first time and why she would share that information with him. The guy warned that if she even thinks or tries to trick him, she'll only make things worse. He's only giving her one chance, to which she replies that she just needs his help. She shared that her friend was kidnapped by someone and sent to the very arena where normal people are not allowed to enter. She has no idea what will happen if she is even a couple minutes late and allows the villain to do his thing. The Duke had no idea it was so serious. He even came to his senses that maybe just maybe, someone's life depended on him now, and he just can't afford to pass it by. He says he can't act rashly based on unverified information. Besides, she's just an aristocrat who probably just wanted to meet and thus get his attention. She had nothing to do but to say the following, that if she could help him and offer a mutual benefit to the... He doesn't even have words to comment on it. The girl at first glance doesn't look like someone who could help him with anything. But on the other hand, he's very interested and confident, as if this is a case where looks can be deceiving. He replied that he understood perfectly well how worried she was about her friend, but there was no way he could drag the noblewoman into a dangerous situation. Milana reminded him that the noblewoman was currently in real danger. From him only need one thing, to lead her to the place where all the villains probably converge and drag there their prey. The guy says he can promise only with the initial location, for more to count on does not advise. It looks like he doesn't trust her very well. It's not surprising. But on the other hand, she should be grateful even for that. Maybe when they get to the place, the Duke will realize that she's telling the truth and not deceiving him. Suddenly, some man with blue hair and a cloak ran behind, and when the window appeared, the girl barely had time to read that he was a knight of the Duke of Jahig, Levi. Meanwhile, the guy asks where they're going to go now, and Milana was prepared for that question beforehand. And she's chosen a place from which she can get all the information about the capital. It's some high place. It's called that. There was a tall tower nearby. It was much taller than all the other buildings, and of course the girl paid attention to it first. There are so many steps that we had to pause and take breaks. Without preparation, it's hard to go to such heights, especially in the evening when everyone is tired. Meanwhile, until they rise, the guy can't get the thought out of his head that he's completely lost all vigilance. Can't believe he started listening to the words of this mysterious woman. He barely opens his eyes to look under his feet, and every second he fights the urge to bring all the cases for tomorrow. He often looks at her closely, doubts at first, and then reassures himself that it is unlikely that the girl could deceive him, and at least would not dare to do so. Her pink eyes speak for themselves. They don't meet often, and if something happened, finding her wouldn't be a problem. Her looks are memorable from the first time you see her. Since childhood, the guy has two heightened senses. He has always been able to read something in the eyes of people. Whether it is affection, admiration, or hostility, he read everything in a second, and thus left in his circle only worthy. It was like that until the day they met. Milana's eyes are peculiar. It's like they hide all the information and he can't see anything. The time passed quickly, but because of these thoughts, he didn't even hear her. He was thinking and stopped noticing everything around him. While she's in front of him, it is very hard to ignore those pink glass-like eyes. They are so clear and pure that you want to stare into them forever. At the same time with the beauty, her gaze is very cold and fearless. It is even impossible to say something short about her. I want to describe this person with the most beautiful words. At first glance, the girl is mesmerizing, but at second glance, frightening by its unusualness and uniqueness. Without realizing it, he found that his lips moved and asked her what her name was. His brain didn't want to do that, but you can't fool the senses, and everything happened by itself. The girl was not shy and gave her name very quickly, adding that how strange it was that she had not told him this before. She doesn't want to stand here in the dark. Milana asked to postpone this conversation to another day, and suggested that she hurry up and finally go upstairs. She would very much like to take some time and talk to him quietly, but it would be too awkward and bad timing right now. Once they got to the top of the tower, it was something incredible. There's a completely different atmosphere. Didn't even want to go back down again. So many windows appeared in front of her. She had never seen so many before. Since she had gotten here, she had started reading information from every house downstairs, and there were over 1,000 windows popping up. It's much more comfortable this way, but it's hard to see what she's interested in. Milana made sure the elevated area was the right choice, and now should get down to business. She found the right building in seconds. It's where a lot of people gather in the evenings and play games that are often punished for participation. There is the largest hall in the city, run by a wanted group. Milana found the place. It was a lot easier than she thought it would be. You see, so much information at once. Not an easy thing to do, but otherwise, the result would not have been in the next few months, and so it only took a couple of seconds. And also, the altitude has made her suddenly dizzy and out of control, and she's already starting to fall downward. Her eyes are dark, her legs won't hold her. All she can do is scream and hope that the guy will react in time to catch her. How lucky it was that there was a railing nearby that she accidentally grabbed onto and everything was fine. Milana was really scared, and now she's afraid to look at the city from such a height. The guy reacted a little later and approached when he didn't have to anymore. But they clashed looks, and from the outside, it looks like fate itself is creating situations for them to finally take a closer look at each other. Milana had to look at him at such close range, she'd already lost control of herself. She is driven crazy by that direct and determined look. Those strong shoulders and tall figure just can't go unnoticed. She's so out of control that she starts asking some weird questions that have nothing to do with the case. She was suddenly curious to know if he was strong or not, sounding strange and awkward, and when she realized it, would feel a terrible sense of shame. But he didn't even laugh, and replied that he hadn't been asked such a question in a very long time, and yet, if she was that much interested, at least he wasn't the type to give up easily. The girl says that since that's the case, why doesn't he take her with him? Then he starts to pull away and explains that it's different. It's not as simple as she thinks it is. An argument about what's best to do. She insists on her way, he insists on his way, and it's likely to go on for a long time. He wants to convey that it's not about trust at all. He wants to know how accurate her information is and how safe everything is, even for themselves. He won't have time to follow someone else. The guy isn't used to working like that, especially since he doesn't have the time or inclination to discuss it this late in the day. She starts to say that they can spend a lot of time and she will still go with him, and the other option, he can immediately agree and definitely will not regret it. A terrible fear envelops him that he trusts the stranger. She presses him harder and harder and no longer even asks if he can or not. She clarifies the road as if he already agreed to it. And then he gives in, agrees to take her along, but warns that he'll have to deal with her separately and make sure she can cooperate properly and not just go along for the adventure. Milana is very happy. She already knew that everything will work out, and now she is just convinced of her abilities and does not plan to stop at what has been achieved. The girl reminds him that she is not feeling well, asks him to carry her in his arms, for as she has already seen, it is not difficult for him to do so. She offers to put her left arm around her and her right hand around her sword so she can defend herself at any time. The handsome man smiles and even closes his eyes. He realizes she's not doing this by accident, just subtly provoking, and recognizes how soft his temper is. She was in his arms so quickly that she didn't even notice it. They are on their way and Milana is already very satisfied. He is fun and very interesting to deal with. The girl's face does not show it, continues to pretend that she treats him absolutely neutral. Meanwhile, she just can't get her head around how this man holding her in his arms can be so strong and not even blink an eye in the meantime. She felt weightless for the first time, at least the way it looks from the outside. He doesn't feel her so much that it's hard to even imagine what the weight must be to make him feel even the slightest bit heavy. The road was very good, comfortable, though it could not be otherwise. She felt the fastest speed she had never traveled in all her life. They were already in place. The guy let the girl go, and to make sure everything went safely, she warned him, it was best not to look directly at the object or show what they were here for. The task is right in front of them. You need to hide and observe the situation. Going straight in is not a good idea. They just came around the corner and Milana asks who Magdala is. From the guy's reaction, it was clear this person is very famous and is surprised that she doesn't know anything about her. The girl explained that she had only recently arrived in the capital and had not had time to find out everything, and even if I had, I wanted to rest and be alone in this new, unfamiliar place. It's all about the fact that somewhere out there is a man born with a real God blessing, Magdala magic, a vicious criminal who doesn't hesitate to do bad deeds, arson and all that sort of thing. Her faction has a huge number of subordinates. They are just like her, ruthless and never afraid of anything. It is incomprehensible for Milana how such a dangerous person for the society can still be at large, not hiding his intentions, talking about it loudly in the middle of the street. And then the guy remembers some very important information. The villain is very famous for sacrificing her subordinates to escape. The subordinates don't even know each other by sight, which makes it difficult for spies to infiltrate. Magdala is a really disgusting person, but on the other hand, incredibly smart. Well, if she saves the world, that won't be her concern anymore. The girl gets a new quest. The knights from the Duke's family are very close by. They make sure that the villain leaves the arena safely. As a reward, Milana will get 700 gold, a bonus of 2% and no penalty again. It seems to be worth it. It's time to see if the new ally has any plan, if indeed he has had time to come up with something in such a short time. He says that everything is clear, there's nothing to be invented, and from the very beginning that you'll have to sacrifice something for the common good. He feels bad inside about not being able to save everyone, but he won't make excuses or think about it. There's no other choice. And also warned that Milana's friend might be in danger too. Not the most pleasant news, but it seems he's not kidding, and this is something she's going to have to think very seriously about, whether she's willing to take those risks, or maybe she needs to take her time and come up with a gentler plan. And then she says, of course she's not going to criticize him. All methods are good in these situations, but she's got a better idea. The guy wasn't used to someone arguing with him and suggesting things, but in this situation he kept silent and gave her a chance to suggest something, because maybe she really was right and her idea would be safer. Milana looks at this building and learns that the building is 2 stories above ground and 3 below it. Lyra is in the second basement floor and the villain is in a room on the first. It's hard to imagine what she would do without these clues. They do half the work for her. At the very least, it took her a while to find out who was where, and it's not like she'd even be able to do that. Also, the guards, Andre and Jules, they pretend to be drinking different drinks when in fact, there's water inside. It's not a bad system, but they can handle those undercover guards. They've done more than that in a long time. The only thing left is to find out how Magdala always manages to escape easily. Lucky that the guy knows something. And it turns out that usually at some distance from the main base there is a secret hideout. Maybe she goes right there, uses secret passages, and can hide there very easily, not even necessarily to run somewhere further away. The girl thought that no matter how bad the security on the streets was, some people were still alive. If they wanted to hide a hideout from prying eyes, they wouldn't go too far to do it. The assistant offers to get rid of the guards, but Milana stops him and says that actually, they could have solved the problem a long time ago, but their goal is to save as many lives as possible. It's all about him trusting her and not doubting a word she just asked him and is waiting for an answer. He didn't get ahead of himself and said he trusted for now, but that didn't mean it would always be that way. In any case, as long as he trusts her, from now on he will have to follow her instructions, absolutely unquestioningly, without any attempt to do things her way. A sudden change of plan is not going to do any good, and meanwhile, they're already at some height, as if they've climbed the very same building, and it's been no more than a second. At one point, there was a very awkward situation. She grabbed onto his neck so hard, as if they were falling from a great height, but they stood still, and the guy asked what she was holding on so tightly for. Milana made a disgruntled face and said that everything is for safety. No one knows when they will have to react quickly, which means it's never a good idea to relax. It was clear that it wasn't like that. The real reason was something else. But he pretended to understand and didn't ask uncomfortable questions. A new pop-up appeared with information that Magdala had prepared a hideout to flee the crime scene, and only the 5 supervisors knew about it. Now we need to find these people. With this information, they definitely have a chance. At least she thinks so. And now the fun part starts. They come back and start looking for the right people before anyone goes home. Just as she thought, the first people she meets are the guards, drinking water and pretending not to notice anyone, considering she knows the truth. It looks too funny, though if she were any other person, it would all look very truthful. The girl had made up a legend beforehand, as if she was looking for her friend and wanted to ask them if they had seen her lately. The guards started whispering among themselves, and afterwards, one of them allegedly remembered that he had recently seen a woman with blue hair. Milana said that her friend had that exact hair color and made it clear that if they could help her, she would be very grateful. And then one of them comes over and starts acting a little weird and suggests we talk about everything inside. These two think they are stronger and can trick her, but they have no idea that it will be just the opposite. If Milana was a normal girl, she would be afraid of them and would have run away a long time ago. But since she came here on business, it's okay. She's in control. As soon as they get to the door, the men start laughing quietly, sure they've trapped her, but in fact, it's a little different. Milana isn't as naive as they think she is. The man starts touching her and no longer hides the fact that she is trapped, starts hinting that she must listen to him or she will never get out of here again. They had already come to a door of some kind, knocked, and heard in reply an unpleasant outcry, as if someone had been awakened. The man comes out and doesn't understand what the guards are doing here. They want to guard the entrance and make sure no one comes in. They thought they were going to be praised and began to tell that they had come to help Magdala. They had brought the girl because they had heard that she was understaffed. That man grabbed her arm, asked her to stand behind him, and proceeded to reprimand those assistants himself. It was a little strong and unpleasant, but she tolerated it and didn't make a sound, though in any other situation, she would never have let someone do that to her. Milana didn't listen to any of this. She calmly walked into the room and started looking for things that might come in handy or be useful. There is a letter from Reiner on the table. The man is unhappy that he has to do an unpleasant job. He has too little authority, and in general, he is not satisfied with what he gets for it. There was another letter underneath. It was written by Reiner's wife. She expresses her love for him and urges him to settle down. Now we have to figure out how to use it. The girl didn't have time to think about it, but the man approached her and asked her if she shouldn't meet her friend and why she didn't say anything about it. She stopped pretending and ordered him to tell her where Magdala was at once, for she wasn't really interested in any friend. And at this point, system windows start to appear. Because of them, there is no sense of fear. Everything looks like a game, and maybe it's even better. Milana even addressed this man by name. He was in complete shock because he doesn't understand where she got this information from. She starts to keep scaring him, talking about his wife's letter and what it says, even though he himself saw that the girl didn't even open it or touch it. He was so nervous he asked for her password. Only people who are actually one of them know it. At the same second, a clue pops up. A password. The sick lion growls. She immediately says the phrase and is ready to see his eyes about to go wide in utter bewilderment as to how this is possible. She didn't even let him say anything. She explained that this wasn't the time for that and said that there was information that the Duke was planning a surprise raid and it could happen at any moment. It was to make him realize the seriousness of the situation, stop thinking and immediately take the girl to her mistress. The man was so much frightened that he did not notice how he gave in to the manipulation. And while he was still here, she asked him to release one of the girls with blue hair they had kidnapped, supposedly one of her subordinates, to which he replied that of course he would bring her right away. Everything turned out to be much easier than she thought. Although there is a little bit of no beginning inside, now it is absolutely comfortable here. It is not scary to even see Magdala anyway. The beginning has been made, and the next thing to do is to keep going. Now it's time to meet the real one, and surprisingly, Milana isn't even shaking. She's totally confident and has no doubt that she'll make things even easier with her than with her assistants. Before she shows up here, the girl starts to remember who she's going to have to talk to, and that makes her a little uncomfortable. The villain doesn't need to get rid of a person who just looks unpleasant to her, let alone if someone dares to be rude or try to harm her. She doesn't tolerate it and doesn't make exceptions. This person is so cruel. There's probably nothing worse in this world. If it wasn't for her, thousands of innocent people would still be alive today. Rumor has it that some people won't even agree to work with her for the huge fees. Everyone knows how she reacts to anything she doesn't like. No amount of money is worth risking your life at work, and every day at that. It's hard to even list those who stayed with her. They are the bravest and most fearless people. That's the kind of people we need. The girl doesn't deal with others. All this time, she was sitting quietly in her so-called office, and then an assistant comes to her and says that someone wants to meet with her. She has never met anyone so brave in all the time she has been doing her work. The assistant relayed that the guest was hinting that he knew the next base, and the words gave the villainess goosebumps. She had never felt like this, and even caught herself thinking that she was a little afraid to go to her place. It all seems incredibly suspicious to her. At least the fact of how she got in here in the first place and knew this was the place to find someone. This is a top secret place, but since the girl's already here, I had to let her in and let her say what she wanted to say. The door opens. Milena comes in. She tries to show that she is not afraid of anyone and feels that she is on an equal footing with her. The girl slowly raises her gaze, not giving the villain a single chance to feel superior, and at the same time maintains a mysterious look to be the first to see the fear in her eyes. Everything is under control. She knows exactly what to say, how to behave, and what to agree to. Magdala tries to manipulate, smiles, but she fails. Her trembling voice breaks through and gives away how she really feels. Magdala hates feeling weaker or realizing she has far less information than anyone else. She is very quick to grab the first item she can find and throws it anywhere, hitting one of her aides, which again proves how much she doesn't care about others, even those who haven't done anything. Milan realizes that it's not going to be easy, but he won't give up. There's no turning back. It turns out that the villain thought she was being deceived. Milana's appearance is too beautiful, and she can't be a person who understands all these things. She thinks that she is just an ordinary girl who was curious to get in here, and for this she thought of nothing better than to make a legend and then quietly leave and tell about what she saw to all her friends. Milana doesn't give up. She calms herself with the fact that she still has system windows. Everything can change at any moment. It is necessary not to react to such antics and keep herself in control. It's hard for her to imagine what it's like to work with someone like that. They leave work every day, and thank fate that nothing happened to them today. It's horrible. In the meantime, just in case someone else doubts it, I had to repeat that her name is Milana, and she really works with Mr. Wayne. The girl asked not to pay attention to her appearance, because it often happens that it can be deceptive. She pretends to be very happy to meet them. She's here to help, and by no means should she be seen as some kind of enemy or spy. Magdala feels very strange. It's been a long time since she's seen her unafraid and talked to without even a shaky voice. Milana acts like she has the exact same status as the villainess. She's doing very well, and so far she's got quite a reputation here, even though the villain doesn't really believe what she says. She hasn't thrown a glass at her, and that's saying something. Milana chose the right moment and started telling how she took a risk and came here by herself. She has no helpers with her, and the only thing she would like to do is to be useful to them. Started talking about how her boss, Wayne, was plotting against Magdala, planning to betray her and get all the power in the near future. Recently, one of the assistants told her exactly the same information, and that's the only reason the villainess believed her. She no longer looks at her with suspicion, but on the contrary, asks to tell her as much as possible. To finally stop thinking she wasn't trustworthy, the girl herself offered to check on her, so there would be no further questions. And meanwhile, while they're talking, the guy isn't standing still. He's already tackled the guards and has someone helping him with it. It's someone. He doesn't think Milana can be trusted so easily and do all her errands. Suddenly, she's up to something against and is actually on the side of the villainess. The guy didn't even want to hear it. He knows perfectly well she won't cheat on him. He just feels it and has absolutely no doubts about her. He explained that he had thought the same thing about her at first. She seemed like a naive girl, but as it turned out, Milana was special. When he looks into her eyes, something inside tells him that she's not someone to be feared or tested. She can't be on the bad side, and that's absolutely out of the question. He wants to trust her, and also someday, to find out what the reason is that she's the first one whose thoughts he couldn't read even hard enough to read. His flushed face at the mere mention of Milana speaks for itself. He fell in love with her, and the assistant realized it very quickly. He would like to believe that the gentleman was not trying to feel and still consciously think. There are too many situations around when, because of love, people stop seeing the real face of the one who charmed them. Meanwhile, they need to focus on getting Magdala's attention. It was part of Milana's plan, which he remembered very well. He is already looking forward to the moment when she is free and he can talk to her. Without her beautiful eyes and voice, he can't even last a couple of hours. Even though he doesn't admit it to himself, it's true. The guy started thinking about her so much that he doesn't look like himself anymore. He used to be very serious, unapproachable, and now he's calm, completely different. Zlolek already liked the girl's idea. She had come up with a test that would show exactly who was who, just that Magdala had changed Wayne's password. And if she turns out not to be one of his subordinates, there's no way she can recognize him, and if she can't respond, she'll never get out of here again, and it's not a sure thing she'll live. She doesn't usually take kindly to traitors. Milana has a sword near her, and she's so well in control she doesn't even flinch. The villainess appreciates the bravery but is still waiting for an answer to her question. She even gave her a few minutes and warned her that if there was no answer, someone would regret daring to trick her. Magdala draws her sword again, coming closer and closer, ready to answer for her words, as she suddenly. The girl says the password, "Get rid of the black lion, and just in case," says the previous one. The lion cub goes limp, and the old lion shakes his head. She has no idea how anyone could come up with such a password, but still, it doesn't matter now. The villainess was already ready to hurt her. She was very upset, so just stabbed the sword into the door, and at that moment, the girl even thought she was tricked. She was scared, but it's okay. Magdala doesn't understand what the catch is. This stranger is too confident. She knows everything and more. After a little thought, the villainess believed her and resented the fact that Wayne had betrayed her for a few coins after all, as Milana added that he wasn't the only one. Besides him, there are two other people who have betrayed the organization and are already clearly up to something. They had plenty of time, especially since they did it all in threes. It was the last one. She has no reason to distrust this girl. She couldn't have made it up, which means everything is going according to plan. Milana was convinced that this man wasn't so scary if she could find a way to approach him, which she did successfully. And that's not all. The villain finds out that they've brought the Grand Duke and he's around here somewhere. She has to imagine what she'd do if she didn't find out and sat quietly in her office, unaware of any of this. The girl asks not to hesitate. Every second counts. Now they better run away and find a new hiding place for themselves. Magdala has never been so nervous before. She's no longer thinking whether to believe it or not. She's just panicking and afraid to move from her seat. Suddenly the walls start to shake, the windows shake. You hear someone trying to get in here, and one of the assistants tells you that the Duke is already outside. Milana rejoiced. It was about time. Now she was very interested to see what the villain would do. After all, she had already done everything she needed to do. Now all that was left was to watch, and for now, that was the end of it. Now it's up to the Duke. His knights are already gathered around him. They are skillfully dealing with the enemy's guards and aides. The woman can't believe her eyes, and has even forgotten that it's not very safe to look out of the window. It'll be decided in the next few minutes, and if she can't escape, it's a done deal. She's already got a headache wondering how all these people got here. It was a top-secret place that was supposed to be a safe haven for a long time, but from today on, things would be different. On the street is her greatest enemy, the one she fears most in this world. Now she can only hope for a new assistant if Milana continues to pretend to be on her side. A window pops up, and the girl realizes that the villainess wants to bring her into her social circle. Now she absolutely trusts and has no doubt that she can be dealt with. And it seems that the most interesting thing begins. Milana can tell the truth at any moment, because in any case, the Duke is near and she is safe. From that point on, they decide to run. They have some kind of secret passage, and surprisingly, the villain wants to take the girl with them. She does not want to leave her here because Milana can be useful. The girl decided to continue the case and do not rush to reveal the truth, in case there will be something more interesting to learn. At least now she's going to end up in a secret location, which is not a bad thing. The villainess is angry and asks not to be made to repeat herself twice. Time is short and she's as nervous as she's ever been before. Milana thought it would not be unreasonable to go on with them. She was in no hurry to go out, for the Duke was busy, and she would only be in his way. They are already in some dark corridor. Now you can take your time, but the villain only speeds up. She's scared and doesn't want to stop for a second. She's out of control for the first time and has no idea where she'll be staying now, if she can escape, of course. Looking for a place in this neighborhood is definitely not an option. The Duke's aides will check everything and everywhere. That's something she's dealing with later. Right now, she's just focused on keeping up her pace. And then she makes a very unexpected decision, asks the girl from today to be the highest-ranking employee in her organization, would know the woman to whom she offers this. In case they manage to get out, she offers to plan the next job, and Milena at this point just looks at her and doesn't even know what to answer. She didn't think it would go this far, when suddenly, the villain opens the door, runs on without looking, and falls into some abyss. It's never been here before. She's been walking this way a lot, and it seems the Duke's aides have managed to make a new trap for her. The woman landed on the ground and saw in front of her the people she had just run away from, as it turned out, all for nothing. The Duke approaches her and realizes that if he had done the plan himself, things would have been completely different. Inside, he is madly grateful to Milana, but for now, must see it through to the end. The villain begins to think how he did it, asking all sorts of questions, and then something happens that she didn't expect again. Milana walks past her and sides with the Duke. It all made sense. No need to even explain anything. She looks at her and can't believe that another person she trusted has turned out to be a traitor. She doesn't understand how that girl dared to do that to her. She trusted her and ended up regretting it so much. Milana didn't even really. She initially took great pains to pretend she was comfortable talking to her, and actually wanted to finish her work sooner and show her real face. Magdala has nothing left but to try and do at least something. She grabs her small copper and starts attacking the girl. She begins to hate her even more than all her enemies, though she should hate herself and wonder why she made that mistake, though she thought herself very clever and shrewd. Before she could even touch her, the Duke protected Milana and prevented her from even a single wound from appearing. He is many times more powerful than Magdala. She knows it and didn't even fight back. The guy ended up asking to take her over and keep her under control. He'll deal with her again. Half-aid as he ordered to go to rescue the wounded and asked the others to go after him to capture the rest of the Everything went as predicted. Milana can't be happy that she did everything perfectly and has no regrets. The condition for the success of the mission was to help the villain. It was necessary to escape from the illegal territory, which at first seemed impossible. What was supposed to happen next wasn't written in the terms, but she did everything and is just waiting to see what happens next. In any case, the security forces will take some time to arrive after they learn of the Duke's arrival. Thanks to the news from security, the lira was able to be recovered, and that's the main thing. She has seen it personally and is very happy that the girl is safe. Now, all that's left is to discuss how they are doing and get on with their lives in peace. The hardest part is over, and at the very least, she's already earned his trust with whom forever, and that can't help but make him happy. He tells her that without her amazing strategy and her courage, it wouldn't have worked out. He's glad he didn't push his own agenda and let her prove herself. It had actually been a very long time since she had last received a compliment, so she was a little shy and couldn't respond to anything. When the girl started to leave, he got upset and asked if they weren't even going to say goodbye and he couldn't walk her home. Milana hesitated. She wanted to quietly leave to rest, but since he insisted, then so be it, she could give him some of her time. The guy had been thinking about it from the beginning, and since there was time now, he was insanely curious to know how the girl realized that the villain had so many bases. No one had ever talked about it, but for her there was nothing surprising about it. She answered that everything was elementary, because a person like her could not limit herself to one hiding place. She would have done the same thing. The villain was just unlucky. She was very gullible, and should have grabbed the suspect and run away before it was too late. The more cowardly a person is, the more often he thinks about escape. The main thing I suspected was that there must be a secret base there that even aides or close people might not be aware of. She was just thinking from her point of view, and it seemed elementary before, as if any other person could have thought of it. Milana tells about it, and notices that the Duke's look has changed. He is so pleased with her that if he could get her a position as his chief assistant, he would do it with pleasure. And now, he demanded to tell the most important thing, how she managed to gain the villain's trust and what happened during the infiltration of the secret base. He is so insistent that she no longer has the ability to keep quiet, and at this point, the girl confesses that she really wants to discuss it. She wants to rest both mentally and physically. His questions only burden her head, and if possible, it would be nice to discuss it at any other time, but not now. The guy was upset. Although he understands very well what it's like to feel tired after a hard day's work and wait for the moment when you finally get to lie down on the bed and sleep for at least half a day, he's had a lot of such situations himself, and so he did not insist much, let her rest, and thanked her for a very good job, for he could hardly have done it so easily and quickly without her. He would really like to express his gratitude in the best way possible, but he just doesn't have the words. She has exceeded all her expectations, and of course her credibility is now at an all-time high. She used all her abilities and made a tremendous contribution to his work and prospects. He will be grateful for the rest of his life. All in all, Duke is insanely proud to have met her, and doesn't even want to remember that moment when he didn't even give her a chance to say one word. Milana senses this man's sincerity. She is well aware of how much he has to say and says that as soon as he needs her, she will gladly help in any way she can. It was a very pleasant and warm conversation. The two of them had only pleasant feelings that cannot be described in words. And then he had an unexpected idea. He suggests that she come to the Duke's mansion and he'll thank her there. Although it sounds a bit strange, just a few words were enough for her, and probably unnecessary. She doesn't read that she has done so much to deserve any gifts or thanksgiving. In response, he laughed and just asked her to come visit, as if she didn't take it the way he meant it to be taken. The guy promised that everything would be fine. She would take her time and be satisfied, although he didn't give any details. She's in a complete stupor and feels she has to refuse, but on the other hand, she can't do it. The Duke will be offended, and in general, she has plenty of free time. There's no reason to refuse and spoil the relationship. Most of all, she doesn't want other people to know or see her talent. This will be the biggest problem and should be thought of in advance. It seems that she has too serious a choice in front of her, although in fact, he just invites her to visit and probably just goes to have tea with her. It is unlikely that they will meet again on a normal day, and as long as there is a chance to take care of it, he did it. The worst thing that could happen is if they lose contact and can't reach each other. That would be a real problem, at least for him. The next day came, The Duke didn't even have time to enter his office properly. He already has guests. Some girl came and said that she heard the great news. He managed to capture Magdala, and in her opinion, it's unbelievable. The Duke didn't really want to brag about it, but on the other hand, hearing other people's admiration was nice too. It's a little weird that the girl doesn't even say hello. She acts like it's her office and he's a guest. But I guess the guy's used to it. She behaves very confidently, even more confidently than he is. Only after a while she realizes that she could have warned him about the visit, but as usual, she forgot to do it. Also, it wouldn't hurt to say hello, but it's too late. It turns out it's his cousin, who has always been distinguished by her behavior. She feels at home here. He's never said anything to her about it, and it seems like sooner or later he's going to get really sick of it. It suddenly becomes clear what she really came for. The girl begins to resent that her father is still sitting on the throne and won't even let her be a princess. She's afraid that after such a serious case and success in it, her father will do more for her brother than for her. She's not afraid to talk about it and states that she's very excited about it. She doesn't want to be left with nothing and not even get princess status. She has a strong sense of injustice that she wants to fight against, tired of living in fear that sooner or later she will lose everything she has now. Most of all, it will be unfair if the throne will get a cousin, and the native daughter will be on the sidelines and she will be forgotten very quickly. The guy himself understands this. On the one hand, now it is fair, but on the other hand, not so much. He wants to support her. He even said he never had any thoughts about it. He was just doing his thing and not counting on anything. Though if it's as she says, it won't be bad, except that it'll be very awkward in front of her. The girl deserves to be the heiress, and it's unclear how things will turn out in the end. Duke is confused and does not even know what to do. He will be happy to get a reward for his work, but he cannot say it directly. He is tormented by a sense of injustice. But for now, in his thoughts, only one thing: Milana and no one else. He is not even interested in discussing his future. For him, it is much more important what concerns this beautiful and amazing girl, without whom he can't imagine his life anymore. And presently in the Redder family, the Baron was dead and his wife was missing. To speak of the tragedy of the family would have been too supine to her, so the lad did not ask, but there must be a reason to hide her abilities. The Duke wants to meet her very badly, and as soon as possible, he remembered that the girl was worried about it, but for some reason did not pay enough attention to it. Except that if he, the Grand Duke, comes in person and it stops just at the level of relations with important witnesses, he doesn't like it and wants it to be somehow different. In the end, he stopped listening to his sister. She was talking to herself. Although she didn't expect more from him, he never really got involved in her problems, and nothing has changed now. He just smiles, pretends that nothing has happened. But the sister, as a girl, understands perfectly well that the Duke can only be in such a state if someone has appeared in his life. He usually takes his job too seriously. And now, not even really getting into a situation where he might soon be able to elevate his status, that's very unlike him. Meanwhile, Milana has been on the road all morning and has just arrived at her destination. She has tried to remain inconspicuous and continues to do so even now. A little embarrassed to see the ducal house in front of her, she just had memories of when they didn't know each other, and she was afraid to even look at it. And also, a few days ago, she had a very important conversation. She was offered a very long-term partnership. Some woman told me that among the hidden valuables of Magdala Magan, who was captured yesterday, there is one item that urgently needs to be appraised. And apart from Milana, they have no one who can help them with that. They offer a huge reward, but the girl is not even interested in this. This woman, it is not she who offers her cooperation through her offers, or rather asked for it by the Duke himself. That is why she came to him as soon as the opportunity arose. This is one of his assistants who has come to explain all the nuances and tell us what her job will be. This time, the Duke will not be able to attend and help. He will be busy training the new staff. The work is not complicated, so it can be easily handled by one person, but only the one who understands something about it. To be employed meant that she would naturally have to perform the duties of a clerk. But thinking of meeting the Grand Dukes, she has the same emotions she had when she saw him for the first time. It's like the first time, and it doesn't feel like they're on a whole different level of the relationship. A pop-up window appears that describes Elisa, one of the Duke's employees. She is very agitated and afraid that she won't be able to persuade Milana. The girl did not torment her, agreed at once, and asked where to go to get down to business immediately. She couldn't refuse such a nice girl, especially since it doesn't cost her anything to help in such an easy case. because it doesn't even compare to the way she worked hard with the villain. It was really hard there. She's already there. She's even seen him from afar. And even though there's a great trust and rapport between them, it's like for the first time, she's afraid to even draw his attention to herself. It's too awkward. She gets nervous, blushes, and stops thinking about something else she came here for. Milana was so scared and nervous that she even started to cover herself with her hood and walk the other way, just so he wouldn't see her. She has hopes that thanks to a different color cloak he hasn't seen her in yet, there's a chance the guy won't recognize her, but the girl is very much mistaken. Duke is already looking in her direction and understands perfectly well that she is. It is impossible not to recognize her, at least by the color of her hair. You can imagine what would happen if he walked up to her out of the blue and started saying that the girl was shy today. She's not going to survive this. She's already starting to listen to all the sounds just to make sure he's there. The Duke is already coming her way. There's no point in hiding, and really, he couldn't have done it any other way. After all that had happened between them, he couldn't ignore Milana and pretend not to notice her, even though he was busy, but he decided to come over and say hello anyway, because he was genuinely happy to see her. At one point, she realizes that someone is right behind her and not going anywhere. Those few seconds were the hardest. She didn't even worry this much when she was on a mission near the villain. Today, something is off, and it's weird. She's already shaking, as if she's painted some horror story in her head, which in fact wasn't even there. This man has nothing against her, won't do anything bad or hurt her, and she's reacting to him as if he's the biggest enemy of her life or some monster. He was even more interested to know what was the matter. The guy wanted to touch her shoulder, but some man came over and started to get excited that they were finally seeing each other. It was perfect timing. The girl exhaled, and only now was she able to relax. She was surprised that no one had touched her. That guy had saved her without even realizing it, as if he felt it was the right time to do so. At the very least, he gave her an extra few minutes to calm down and stop feeling so tense. It's too early to relax, but it's better than nothing. If the Duke had touched her when she was shaking all over, nothing good would have happened. But as it is, she's feeling much better. She ended up avoiding the meeting. The girl found her group, joined, and just as it was starting, they start looking at some room, looking at all the details and trying to spot anything suspicious. Knowing the villain, there might be some secrets or hidden buttons here. Milana alone is a few steps ahead. She doesn't have to look at anything, just look at the item and all the information appears on a pop-up window. Only she and no one else can see them. It's convenient, and instead of listening to that guy, she's already getting down to business. While the others are learning what's what they need to do, the girl has it all figured out and is scrutinizing each item carefully. She walks halfway across the room and suddenly, she sees a very interesting jar inside something that looks like a snowflake, and it glows, and it's not minus temperature outside. Looks very beautiful, but no one is in a hurry to touch this jar. It is very unusual and despite its appearance can be deceptive, like a trap. Milana stopped here longer and found out that this is a lost artifact, a magical ancient object that belonged to the Empress. Under certain circumstances, it can explode, creating a powerful cold wave. And all of a sudden, all these people realize that she understands so much more about it. She has more possibilities. And of course, asked her to show something that would be of interest to everybody. The girl doesn't quite understand what they want, and started to worry that someone might have seen her ability. One can only hope that they just said the word without thinking, and it has nothing to do with the fact that they already know everything about her. Meanwhile, the guy had gotten so good at sensing Milana's energy that the moment he never got to see her, he knew it was her. Especially since hardly anyone in the capital had hair as long and purple as hers, it even had a special pleasant scent that he could smell from a few meters away. She hadn't warned him that she was coming. There were various thoughts about what she might be doing here, and naturally, he would have liked it very much if she just wanted to see him, if she didn't have any other things to do. Though judging by recent events, it was clear that she clearly had some things to do. He doesn't feel like distracting her, though it wouldn't hurt to ask her later why the girl didn't even come over to say hello. He was glad of that. Everything turns out so that the girl is afraid to approach him and does not even realize that, in fact, he would be the happiest man in the world. At the sight of her, he forgets everything else, but cannot admit it. He is distracted by assistants, and instead of solving problems, he passes it all on to them and does not want to take on unnecessary tasks. He's got more important things to do right now, like see Milana and find out what she's doing here. He was already smiling, which meant he felt something for her. Hopefully, he wouldn't let it sit there for too long, and sooner or later, he would confess it to her and not hide it. Meanwhile, Milana doesn't even have time to think about it. She's so focused on not making mistakes that she thinks out every move she makes and is afraid to touch anything. There may be a lot more traps than it seems. They can hide in even the most familiar objects, and this artifact is no exception. And then, an unexpected window appears. As it turned out, the artifact explodes only under one condition, which is a bit strange, but still, there should be 30 people around the objects. The condition is fulfilled. There are more than 30. A new message appears. Activation will occur in 5 seconds. If that happens, everyone dies and something has to be done about it. It's not going to work that way. Milana felt that all the responsibility was on her. If she didn't do something, no one would be alive. She could think of nothing better to do than to take this jar and lean it tightly against her body. If the jar cracks and bursts, the people around her probably won't get hurt as badly, and she saves them. It was so cold that her body almost turned to ice. She got some frosty marks on her face, and at exactly the same second, the Duke appeared in the room. It's amazing how he sensed the danger and came just as Milana was risking her life. I wonder if he can help her, and even if he can, how he's going to do it. He obviously knows something and isn't just boldly going to her aid for no reason. It's been a couple minutes, but everyone's safe and sound. There's just some dust around that makes it hard to breathe, but other than that, everything's fine. People just didn't see what happened to Milana. It's like she's unconscious, not talking, and her eyes are closed. The Duke took her in his arms and told her everything was fine, though she doubted it very much. The girl hadn't seen him come up and didn't quite understand what had happened. All that matters to a guy is that she's okay, the rest can be worked out, and Milana is more valuable to him than anything else. After a while, she sees a huge sword thrust into the wooden floor, and around it many shards of that very jar. It turns out the Duke was somehow inexplicably able to destroy that artifact, though he admitted he had no idea if he could do it or not. Milana thought about it and was very surprised that just now she was willing to sacrifice herself just to save everyone around her. She had resigned herself to dying, and now she was so cold she couldn't even talk. The girl is shivering like she's been out in the cold for days and hasn't had a chance to go somewhere to warm up. In the meantime, the guy decides that he'd better leave the place. He decides to take her home, although Milana persuaded him not to do it, as she could have walked anywhere herself. He wouldn't listen to a word of it. He can see perfectly well what state she's in, and he couldn't in any way afford to leave her alone after all that's happened. She can scream, lash out, beg. He ignores it and wants to make sure she's okay. She's not going anywhere on her own. The Duke doesn't understand why she is so independent and doesn't let anyone help her. After all, it's normal. Especially he, as a Duke, just couldn't do it differently. All she has to do is look at him, relax, and trust him. He's not going to leave her, and she could use the time to relax. She could use it. Milana didn't bother. She closed her eyes and, while she had the chance, thought, why not stop controlling everything? They are already riding in some carriage. The girl is awake and still keeps insisting that he doesn't have to spend so much time and effort on her. He must have a full plate of other work that is much more important. He replied very briefly and clearly that he didn't think that way, and if she wanted to talk about it, there was no point. He had done what he thought was right. And now, the most interesting part begins, since now she is not afraid of him and can talk. The Duke asked her to explain why she tried so hard to avoid him in the morning. He put her in the most awkward position possible. She didn't even immediately understand how and what to say to him. The girl just asked not to communicate as if they were too close. He realized she didn't really want to talk about it, so he didn't embarrass her and just said what he'd wanted to say this morning. That he'd been waiting for her and it was frustrating that we hadn't gotten a chance to talk. It just so happened that she was here. But if he hadn't come over, they wouldn't have even seen each other. It was a hint that he's very hurt, and at the same time, now the girl knows he cares about her. In that case, she has something to say too. Because if it wasn't for his request, she wouldn't even be here. Now it's his turn to answer awkward questions. But he didn't even bother to think. He immediately said that he remembered very well how in their first meeting the girl had easily risked her life for her friend, and also did the same thing today, put herself in danger to protect others. That's exactly what he liked about her. But Milana stopped him and asked him what that had to do with what she had just asked him. The guy just laughed and asked what's unclear here. It's like he wants her to figure it out for herself and not ask such stupid questions. Maybe Milana realizes it all herself. She just wants to hear it straight. But since she's so interested, Duke said she's a very nice person. She's strong, brave, and so, then that he wants to see her often. There's nothing wrong with that. It sounds clear, but the point here is clearly different. I don't think it was just because he was brave that he became so obsessed. His cheeks were even flushed, and the fact that she was a good person had nothing to do with it. At some point, she mentally took her mind off the whole conversation and noticed that even though she could see the system windows, she didn't have any powers. She wasn't physically strong anymore and couldn't use magic. Even if she could go back in time now, she'd still do the same thing and have no regrets. In the meantime, they had already arrived at her house. The carriage had stopped. Even the driver was worried about the girl. She was not going too fast on purpose so that the mistress would not in any case get a headache. Milana walks out quietly, and the guy gives her his hand like a true gentleman. He tries so hard to please her that he doesn't notice that sometimes it's too much already. A couple more days and the girl will guess everything. The Duke doesn't even try to hide his gaze. He is kind, embarrassed, and thinking only of her. Milana is a little embarrassed and afraid to misunderstand him, because maybe he only treats her that way because she helped him, and if it weren't for that, she thinks that maybe he wouldn't even pay attention to her. They all have so many thoughts that they are only making things worse by doing so. A little more courage and things could have been different. It is very difficult to hide their feelings at the stage of latent sympathy. They seem to understand everything, but at the same time, doubt and think that they are wrong. When it was time to say goodbye, he again asked to meet again soon, without any formalities, just as friends to have a nice time. The Duke was sure the answer would be yes, but Milana says she won't get another chance. She's been very busy and wants a break from everything that's happened in the last few days. The lad did not insist. He listened to her for the first time and rode off in a carriage, pretended not to be offended, though in truth it was a little unpleasant. He tried to take the relationship to the next level, but she refused. And as soon as she was alone, she regretted it a little, even though she could have had tea right now at her house. After a while, that girl came to see her again. She thanked her for her fine work, to which Milana hinted that if they wanted to thank her, it could be raised in money. It was the first time she had been shy to say it, as she'd had to risk her life, and there was no telling what might have been if she had not been saved by the Duke. At least the guest smiles, but she didn't support the idea and asked if she could do with a verbal thank you, because she thought Milana wouldn't ask for anything in return. The girl didn't insist. She just realized that it was better not to cooperate with them. They absolutely didn't value her time and effort. And then some man comes up. They immediately noticed him and were very surprised. They were not expecting him, and they have no idea what he needs. At last, her strength returned and a window appeared with a clue. This man's name is Mark. He is an overly proud appraiser who works on the second floor. His father has a title that is not inherited, but this man acts as if he is a nobleman himself. He came to discuss how she is doing, because he heard that the girl has had a very busy last few days. Milana saw that he wasn't a very nice person, and most importantly, he shouldn't know too much, no matter how much he wanted to. He is used to feeling and demanding respect from others because of the difference in age and experience, but in the case of the girl, he will not expect anything like that. A person's age means nothing to her. It's more important what kind of person they are, what kind of intentions and character they have. Someone younger can deserve respect much more than someone older, and she's been convinced of that many times already. The girl looks at him and doesn't understand how you can so openly put yourself above others just because his father had some title. It is very wrong and ugly from his side, if you ask what exactly he did and how a man is better than the others. Most likely, he will not even have something to say. He is pitied and only out of politeness do not point to his place. Even the other assistants are surprised how a man, being lower in status than Milana, allows himself to talk to her as if it were the other way around. He asks her so many questions and doesn't even think it's none of his business. It's just her business, and she's entitled not to say anything. Milana is a very fair person. She can tell important things even to those who have the lowest status, and those who are on the level with her will not say an extra word. The girl just feels who is who and communicates only with those who deserve it. It does not matter if this person has any status at all. But unfortunately, some people don't realize that. It's enough for some people to brag about their father's merits and think that authority is inherited. This man in particular has done nothing to be considered, respected, and spent his time on him, especially Milana, whom you have to think very many times before approaching, so as not to allow yourself unnecessarily. Meanwhile, she gave these people a chance and even agreed to participate in one experiment. Now they will test their powers and see who can handle it better. In front of them, some object. Inside this jar is holy water, illuminated by the holy beast using olive oil. There is a distinct aura of holiness around. Besides their case, she personally needs to destroy it to successfully complete the main quest. The difficulty is that she has a double responsibility, not only to evaluate and tell as much information about the object as possible, but also to somehow destroy it if she is allowed to do so at all. While the man is looking at this object, the girl thinks how she can combine all this, and if suddenly, everything will work out, how to explain later why she did it. At the same time, about the quest cannot say a word about it. Is her private secret, which must remain secret for as long as she exists in this world. No one should ever know more than is due.